What's up? Welcome to the Space Show.
Whoa.
I'm your host, Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Frost, joined by Admiral Kerry Jackson and Ensign Tony Eccles once more. Thanks, Tony, for joining us on the bridge today.
My pleasure. It's nice to be called up once in a while from the lower decks.
Yeah. And boy, howdy. I wish Rob and Leigh were here with us today. They're busy. They have work or whatever. But we have such a fantastic run of episodes. I cannot wait to talk about them. Before we talk about them, a little bit of light housekeeping. Okay. Like this video if you're watching it on YouTube. Leave a comment if you're watching it on YouTube. Yeah. And also, we mentioned this on the main show, Geekshow, but my best friend Sarah was in a car accident. She was hit by a drunk driver. And so there's a GoFundMe for her. We're over halfway to meeting our goal, but I'm going to put a link in the show description. So please just consider if you have anything to spare. Would really appreciate it.
I know the Geek Show Twitter account retweeted the GoFundMe thing. I don't know if we did on Facebook or not, but we will.
Fantastic. Yes. And she's doing great. I mean, she's in pain. But
I saw some of her tattoos got her
little
up.
frog prints had to have some stitches.
Oh.
Yeah. But overall, she seems to be doing well. They are moving forward with some legal stuff. So
yeah. You should, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In a situation like that, yeah.
But in the meantime, let's talk about some Star Trek. We will be talking about these episodes from season 5 of The Next Generation. Ethics, The Outcast, Cause and Effect, The First Duty, and Cost of Living. And every single one of these episodes is mwah, mwah, chef's kiss.
Oh, you liked them all. This is is this a first? I think this may be a first.
It might be. Just crazy run ahead of us. So, ethics. After an accident that leaves him no longer able to walk, Worf asks Riker to help him commit suicide. Okay, bit of a downer.
As the Klingons do, going out with their honor intact or whatever.
So Geordi and Worf are working in a cargo bay, and one of the containers that they're checking on crushes 7 of Worf's vertebrae and his spinal cord. And typically in Star Trek-averse, I would think, oh, no big deal. But apparently Dr. Crusher and the neurospecialists see no therapy to get him to use any use of his legs again. And Klingon medicine having a bias against neuro research, Klingons say that they usually let the patient die in such cases of neurological trauma.
Die with honor, yeah.
Now, did Worf consider suing Starfleet? Because there were no straps to hold those. Did you notice that? There were no safety straps.
I was like, OSHA, 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 OSHA.
And when you think about how often we've had the ship shake.
Come on.
I would think that they would have some straps holding those barrels on, but I digress.
Does Starfleet have money? They don't use money.
This is the same conversation when we talk about them placing bets when they play poker.
Yes,
we're in a post-scarcity society, in a post-capitalist society. What are you suing for? There's nothing to take away except a sense of justice.
Yeah, more days off. That's it. More days off. Your own planet. Oh, that's right. Something else. That's completely different.
I want a city.
Yeah.
Can I be captain of a ship?
Give me a starship.
We're renaming it New Wharf City. We're
giving you 8 Enterprise bucks, and you can redeem those in the holodeck.
Enterprise bucks.
What's the conversion rate to the Quark dollars from Enterprise bucks?
Oh, it's a very, very equitable rate, sir. Very, very equitable.
So Worf quickly asks Riker, as his best friend aboard the Enterprise, to assist him in Hegvat, a Klingon suicide for a permanently disabled warrior to save his and his family's dignity. And Riker, as Riker does, has very strong opinions about this. Mm-hmm. And he is like, absolutely not. So
he's like, no way, I'm not going to do that. Yeah,
absolutely not. So he goes to Picard, and Picard helps Riker realize that Worf is asking his friend for help. Crusher is visiting a scientific friend, Toby Russell, and proudly shows her an invention in development, the Genetronic Replicator, which she believes can scan and reproduce the damaged neurosystem, even in Worf's case. But Worf would be the first humanoid test patient, so Crusher is like, I don't know about this, dude.
Even on animals, they have a 30% success rate.
The success rate
of the time
on holographic patients was 37%.
Holographic patient, yeah.
If something goes wrong, Worf will die. The existing spinal column would have to be removed during surgery, and their knowledge of Klingon neurology is extremely limited due to the limited research on the subject. And Beverly says that Toby's work is still in the very preliminary stages of research, so no way. And while all of this is happening, Worf refuses to see his son Alexander because he's
Paralyzed.
embarrassed. He's
Yeah.
paralyzed and he's embarrassed.
I'd refuse to see that kid too.
For different reasons, but
Listen, you guys,
I
when
know
we
you-
get to the last episode of this run too, I don't understand why people hate Alexander. I love him and I want to hold him and hug him.
He was good in episode 20. This is true. This is true.
Alexander is confused and angry as he cannot see anything wrong with Worf being injured, and Deanna helps Worf understand that Alexander is terrified about the prospect of losing his father. He's already lost his mom. He's been
I mean, he
practically
saw
rejected by his grandparents.
didn't he saw his mom getting killed?
He didn't see her get killed, but I think he saw her body.
He was there for the aftermath, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, of course, he's afraid. So, pride makes Worf decline seeing his son Alexander, and they try the Tony Stark Rhodey leg modifications, which can restore 60% of his motor functions. And Worf believes that lurching from one step to the next will make him the subject of ridicule and disgust. So once again, Toby pitches her Genetronics options to Worf. Beverly is pissed and says that Toby is using the desperation of an injured Klingon to try an experimental procedure that otherwise she wouldn't be able to. And she has already been rejected thrice by Starfleet Medical. The Enterprise goes to assist the USS Denver. Many of the patients in need of medical help after a Cardassian attack. After Crusher sees Russell use an experimental drug on one of the victims from the Denver, Beverly says that Toby didn't even try to use the standard treatments and again used a desperate situation to try out one of her theories on a human patient. And Beverly has Toby thrown off the ship. And honestly, I get it. Not to bring it back to my house fire, but we were in an extremely vulnerable situation. I'm just saying, I can relate because we were in an extremely vulnerable situation, and a few different restoration companies try to poach on your vulnerability and take advantage of you. And Team Crusher here, honestly. So Beverly goes to Picard, and Picard is like, listen, maybe you should let her give it a try. And Beverly is like, are you kidding me, Picard?
This whole episode is just Picard like trying to talk his crew down and let him see other points of view. That's what this episode is.
A good captain.
Yeah, right?
You're right, though. I didn't really consider that.
But
he is just like trying to manage Riker, trying to manage Beverly.
Yep.
And I was Team Picard in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I get it. it. So Picard asks her to please let her return and consider the replicator, as Worf can't accept Beverly's alternative. Picard says that Worf will kill himself if he doesn't get back to his normal self. Picard says that one way or another, he's gonna kill himself.
Yeah.
Picard says that Worf understands the ability to take calculated risks, and the decision about undergoing the procedure should be left to him. Riker, in the meantime, has done his Klingon research, and he goes to Worf and he's like, hey, you asked me to help you with this, with Hegbath. I can't, because according to your rules, friend, your eldest son has to do it. So do you want to ask your child, Alexander, to kill you? And Worf is like,
that kid, he can't
even throw a stick right. Like,
there's no way. There's just no way.
There's just no way.
It's like Hank Hill and Bobby Hill. He just knows the kid's not going to be able to.
Probably not even strong enough to push the knife through my chest.
Riker says that Worf is putting his own desires over the feelings of his friends and family, and even Worf can't ask his half-human son to help him commit ritual suicide. He's not half-human. He's a quarter human, if we're going to get into it.
That's true, yeah.
Beverly agrees to Worf's request to undergo the Genetronics procedure. Worf asks Deanna to care for Alexander if he dies in surgery. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Drive Angry. I think about this movie at least once a day, starring Nicolas Cage and Amber Heard. Nicolas Cage escapes out of hell.
I haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh.
That's the name of it. That's the one where
It's called Drive Angry.
Okay, all
And
right.
he escapes out of hell because Billy Burke has kidnapped his son, I think it is.
But that's not the
And-
one where he plays the devil, though, right? He plays the devil in a different one, right?
Oh, I don't know which one that is.
He's
But
been in so
all
many
right, never
movies.
no, but this one, Nicolas Cage escapes hell, is getting chased down by this one character actor who I love anytime he shows up. And of course, I cannot remember his name. But at the end of Drive Angry, Nicolas Cage gets his baby back, but he has to go back to hell. So he's like, here, Amber Heard, here's this baby. And Amber Heard is like, oh, okay.
Have some responsibility.
I didn't know that was part of the deal.
Ugh. So that's how I felt about Deanna in this situation, where Worf is like, hey, listen, if I die, can you take care of Alex for me? And she's like, I can't say no.
Yeah, it felt pretty out of left field in
Yeah,
my opinion.
right?
You know, I thought he would have asked Riker maybe. You know, I don't know.
Riker would have tried his best to raise him like
Absolutely.
a Klingon.
If you
know?
can't kill me, can you at least raise my son?
Exactly.
Like,
you know? That's
Right
what I was
there.
saying.
yeah. But this request, I think in episode 20, I keep revisiting this request when we watch that later episode with Loxana and Deanna and Alex, because
More sense in that
it
aspect.
it has definitely, I think, altered their relationship in such a way that, like, oh, I think Deanna takes a little bit more of a vested interest in Alex. Anyway, we'll get to that. So they start the procedure. The surgery begins. Toby extracts the spinal cord, and very clean, very clean
Yeah.
spinal cord.
Not even
I
a
was-
drop of blood.
Klingon
or
blood?
Nothing. Yeah.
That pink Klingon blood.
None of that.
I know they would never ever show this on Next Generation, dying to see the cavity where they took out. Like, what's going on in there now?
And they talked earlier about how Klingon physiology has redundancies built into their organs for almost every organ in their body. Right? Except for this
So
one.
while his spinal cord is out, they have 3.5 hours to replicate it and place it back in. But her genetic replicator has issues since it is not properly encoded for Klingon DNA. She makes the adjustments. The surgery works, although after a few minor hiccups when the war flatlines, and Beverly tries to bring him back by still giving him a bunch of drugs. And I don't know what those drugs do, but Beverly's approach seems to be X amount of cc's of various different drugs to try to fix it.
Morphine. More morphine.
More morphine.
Third morphine, please.
Yes,
Ibuprofen. But so Worf flatlines. We think he dies. They call a time of death. Beverly even goes out there and says, "Listen, Alex, I am so sorry." And then magically, he's fine.
System redundancies kicked in.
System redundancies. And everyone's happy except Beverly, who's like, "You, Toby."
She was, even though it was a successful surgery, she still was pissed at
so
this doctor.
pissed.
Which I
Yeah.
thought was pretty cool to have her character react that way, because that's the proper way of reacting. Be happy that it worked, but still this doctor is
You were reckless.
questionable at best, you know, approaching Dr. Moreau status over there.
Ooh,
Oh.
look at you.
During this episode, it is revealed that Klingons have visible ridges on their spines and feet, as well
Yeah.
as their foreheads. How fun. That's the only bit of interesting trivia I have for this episode.
Well, this one is ranked up there as one of the better episodes. It's
Yeah.
because it does what Star Trek is good at doing, which is, you know, making you think about shit. Makes
I
you
love
think about
the philosophical conversations that accompany some of these Star Trek plots, right? Like,
This was like all 5 episodes of this round.
All
with
5
stuff like
episodes?
That, though. Yeah.
I often say I would have majored in philosophy in college if the classes weren't so early in the morning. And so I instead just watched
Or-
Star Trek.
if it was the philosophy of Star Trek class, that's a class you'd attend.
Probably
right
be there.
Somebody
Probably
needs
be
to.
there.
I'll bet it's out there at some college
Gotta
somewhere.
be.
Gotta
Gotta
be.
Totally.
But very, again, it's one of those that makes you think about not just the situation on the show, but situations in real life. You know, how far do we go with human testing? Is it ethical? Maybe we should. You know,
Not
Well, and
not
then
only
the
human
right to-
testing, but also the
right to
right to die and
Right to
quality
die.
of life. Like,
Quality
you
of
know,
life,
we
all that
keep
stuff.
we keep people alive, but at what cost, right?
Yeah.
There's a quality of life that has to be considered, and love a conversation topic, right? Like, very good
Well,
episode.
It gave me flashbacks to my father, because he was having he was in the hospital, just had a horrible time, and was just so depressed and in pain and all of that. And he says, I just don't think I can go on anymore. And I said, Dad, if you want to have that conversation, we can have that conversation. He goes, what do you mean? I said, we can make that happen. Oh, okay. That was when I realized Dad was just looking for sympathy.
Yeah. You didn't actually mean that.
He recovered quickly. It's like, my son was going to have me
My
killed.
son was going to kill me.
I better get better because I don't trust that kid.
I better get better. Otherwise, my son is going to kill me. Have you seen that video? This elderly woman, she's picked out her urn that she wants for when she does pass. And it's like fun. It's covered in like palm trees and stuff. And she's like, yeah, I wanted something that, I really like looking at and that I think other people will like looking at. And she says that she yearns for the urn.
Yearns for the urn.
She's like, yeah, I yearn for the urn. Because there's a lot of TikToks I've seen of people like talking to their elderly grandparents like in their late 90s, and not a not small amount of them are like, yeah, just waiting to die.
You're like, I'm done. I did everything that I could do.
Did my time.
I've had enough. Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to another crazy fascinating episode to watch in the year of our Lord 2024, The Outcast. While aiding.
When did Star Trek get political?
I was going to say that, Carrie. When did Star Trek get woke? When did it get political?
Star Trek get woke?
Day one. All right, shut up.
The thing about this episode, though, is you can argue it from both sides.
You can. And it has been argued from both sides.
Yes.
It is being argued all the time from both sides.
So, while aiding an androgynous race who lost a couple of members in an unmapped region of space, Riker falls for one of them, which can lead to trouble if detected, since the alien race does not endorse gender specificity. So, the Enterprise obliges the androgynous Janai's race to request to investigate a mysterious shuttle disappearance. The Janai are considered androgynous. I think, have we gotten it across that they are androgynous?
No gender.
No gender, for those of you who need a dictionary.
But even on a biological level, no gender. Like no biological sex. No.
It's like a whole thing with their race.
No gender, like construct or anything.
So they reach the last known coordinates of the shuttle, then find no debris or any other evidence of any kind. When a probe follows the inexplicable neutrino emission with no visible source, it too suddenly vanishes without a trace, possibly the first ever documented null space, which absorbs all electromagnetic forces around it. It is like a black hole, but it doesn't swallow matter, only absorbs all energy. This means the shuttlecraft is still around in the null space, but it is trapped and cannot transmit. All the energy around null space is bent. Blah, blah, blah. Science. That's not what we're here for. We're here for because Riker is working with a Janai named Soren. And while contemplating the differences between the social and biological life with or without gender distinctions as they become close, Riker says that he prefers a woman who is intelligent and can hold her own in a conversation. Because also Soren is asking a lot of questions about what does gender mean to him?
Well, she's Riker curious, as
Well,
many
who is it?
many beings who encounter him.
So Riker likes a woman who is intelligent, can hold her own in a conversation, and she has to like his jokes as well. Later, you'll notice he's talking to Deanna and makes a joke, and she does not laugh. But he stipulates that different males think differently, and some are only attracted to physical beauty in females. They discuss the mating rituals of their species. I gotta tell you guys, I was squirming so uncomfortably in my chair watching this episode. Like, no, can we please? Where's HR? We cannot be having these conversations.
There's no HR in the Federation. No HR in the Federation.
If there was, it'd be
beyond that.
There would be an entire Riker wing if there was.
Lucky for him.
Fun.
Here's the Kirk wing and the Riker wing right over here.
Down the hall, everyone else.
They discuss the mating rituals of their species. Soren wonders if the Janai and humans would be sexually compatible. but sex is prohibited in their culture. Soren says that in Janai culture, the babies are incubated in a fibrous husk, which the parents inseminate. This method is less risky and less painful, but Riker says that sex is enjoyable.
It certainly sounds more efficient for creating children, but
She was quick to say, I mean, ours can be enjoyable too. We do things
we
that are
have
fun
fun.
with our
We
private
have
parts.
fun. The Janai used to have two genders, two sexes, but they evolved to a higher form. So for the Janai, gender is considered primitive.
Mm-hmm.
Geordi,
and it kind of is. But anyway, let's move on.
Jordy improves the power banks on the shuttle, blah, 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 blah. So Soren and Riker chart the null space during their first trip. But then while coming back, they hit the edges of the null space, which knocks out one of the shuttle's engines. Soren is injured and then treated by Beverly. And so now she has an opportunity to ask a biological woman, human woman, what's your approach to gender? And
Beverly says, look, I've had sex with Riker. All right. You want to just ask me directly.
just ask.
Has she?
I can point you to, oh yeah, she has. It wasn't Riker. It was,
He was taken over by an entity.
he was hosting an
Right.
entity that
Yes.
Beverly liked. And
It was the trill, the beginning of the trill, the exploring.
and
of
she
that.
even went to ask Deanna, and Deanna's like, listen,
Listen,
get it.
I can't stop him. He's out of control. I don't understand our relationship. No one understands our
I'll be here to
relationship.
pick up the pieces. Go for it.
So Soren is intrigued about how human females behave. Females wear makeup to attract the males, and so she's like, "Oh, so it is on the females to attract the males." And Beverly's like, "Well, so yes and no. Men like to pretend to not do anything to attract a female, even though that's what they do all the damn time. And now males and females are considered equally socially. And again, I'm on my couch shouting at my TV like." Take me there, please. Soren admits to Riker that she identifies herself as a female and is attracted to him, but she cannot admit this openly, as she will be shamed and ridiculed on her planet and made to undergo therapy before being allowed to rejoin society. Woofa doofa. So Soren and Riker return to the null space. Beverly tells Deanna that Soren is attracted to Riker, and bad directing in this episode because they do not once cut to Deanna, and I'm dying to see Deanna's reaction here. We cut to Worf, we cut to Geordi, we do not see Deanna's reaction.
Again, their relationship is, I don't understand it. Anyway, go ahead.
Complicated.
Furious. So they have success. Okay, rescue. The Janai they invite the Enterprise bridge to their planet for a celebratory dinner, and that night, Soren and Riker have sex, which the head Janai Krite notices, and Riker confides in Deanna. Again, Riker, what the fuck are you doing?
Whatever he wants.
Please don't go to Deanna and tell her about your sexual exploits.
Stop asking her for advice about chicks, okay?
Or and then they kiss
There's
on
a
the
reason
lips
she's
after.
not. There's a reason she's not laughing at your jokes, Riker.
Yeah, in this case,
So-
not chicks. But anyway, go ahead. He
Non-binary
does that all
chicks.
the time. All the time. I don't understand their relationship. Anyway, go ahead.
It works out in the end. We've seen.
But at what cost?
A rough road to get there, man.
What can I say? It was worth traveling,
Listen,
apparently.
Deanna's only with him because he can make a good pizza.
I was
That's
going to
the only-
say, it's the pizza, isn't it?
Get you a good pizza.
Sorry, go ahead.
Soren is arrested for loving sexually and sentenced to psychotectic therapy.
Just call it conversion therapy.
It
Just
was,
call it
yeah, it's
conversion
just
therapy.
therapy.
Because that's what, yeah.
That's what it represented.
Riker, once again, big strong opinions on things, bursts into the proceeding. First, he goes to talk to Picard, and Picard is like, listen, we've got a prime directive to think about. And I, on my couch again, I'm like, thank you, Picard, voice of reason here.
Yep.
And Picard is like, could you stop having sex with the aliens? Could you
And
please?
Riker, you've known Soren for 2 days.
Yeah.
Could you
Yes.
stop doing this every time you meet someone?
Goddamn time.
I love her. I know
Ri-
it.
You
She's
don't
the
understand.
one.
Yes.
I think Riker
We need to
might
give
be
her
a Libra.
asylum. And
I wonder if Riker's a Libra. I gotta
Find
look
out.
it up.
Better look that up.
So
she
Riker,
gets asylum in my bedchambers. And then she gets asylum in the restroom.
unrelated. Did you hear the thing that we think Trump keeps referencing Hannibal Lecter in his speeches because when he uses the word asylum for immigrants, he's thinking mental asylum.
Oh my god!
And
same
part
thing with
two,
and visas.
Yeah. Because
when
he's
he
been
thinks-
saying they get credit cards when they come over. No, it's
when immigrants
visas.
come over for
Oh,
visas,
no.
he thinks we're
Yeah.
giving them credit cards.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh!
That's anyway. Sorry. Conversion therapy. Where were
So
we?
Riker bursts into the conversion therapy trial, and he's like, "No, this was my fault. My big beard, my big dick. This was all my fault." And Soren refutes, and she stands up for herself, and she's like, "No, I'm female, and I'm standing by this." And so Riker offers Soren asylum on the Enterprise, to which I turn to my husband, and I'm like, "Hilarious that we're always offering people asylum on the Enterprise. Like, I get it, but it seems to be happening a lot."
Yeah.
And Nor, the judge, is very adamant. So, despite Picard warning Riker not to interfere, he and Worf mount a rescue attempt that night. But now Soren doesn't want to go with Riker and admits that she is sick. And Riker leaves heartbroken.
Because she had the electroshock therapy.
It's already
Because
yeah.
she
It only
went
took it
through
like
conversion
one
therapy.
time.
Yeah. And
Did you notice that Geordi had a beard like Riker?
That's my very first piece of trivia. This is one of 3 episodes where LeVar Burton has a beard.
I wanted him to say. I really wanted him to say, "Hey, did you? What do you think of my beard? It's like yours. Do you like it?"
Burton actually preferred the facial hair, as I
really?
think the rest of us do. But the
looks good.
producers did not. So
Oh,
that's why
boo.
they
Well,
booted that.
that's because we've established bearded Riker is the best Riker.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
that first season Riker, I'm sorry. It's
He
just
I
needs
do
that
like
beard.
babyface Riker.
He needs that beard far more than Geordi LaForge needs his beard.
True.
So
Sure.
I agree.
Sure. So some interesting pieces of trivia about this episode. First, 2 lines of dialogue were cut from the final edit. Nor explaining to Riker that the Janai are, by all accounts, an enlightened race, and Riker asking, then how is it that Soren has no choice about her sexual orientation? Interesting question to ask in the year 2024.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we also learn in this episode that the Federation was founded in 2161. So a little over 100 years from now. Producer Rick Berman tried not to let perceptions of what the public would find acceptable influence them too much in the choice of Riker's opposite, adding, having Riker engage in passionate kisses with a male actor might have been too unpalatable for viewers. But Jonathan Frakes didn't agree. He criticized the decision to cast women in the roles of the Janai because he felt a love affair between 2 men would have made the statement of the episode much stronger.
He's not wrong there.
He's totally
absolutely
right.
Another thing is that Roddenberry, toward the end, said that he wanted more sexually diverse characters because we all know he was the great perv of the galaxy. No, he did. He said he wanted more sexually diverse characters. He wanted gay couples. He wanted all of that to be on the show eventually. And then this was the writer's way of kind of sneaking in there. Maybe let's say some things. It's funny how this episode seemed to me to be. I mean, it talked to the little redneck in me and opened my eyes. But it's funny because in the LGBTQ community, they both praise it and criticize this episode. The criticism come from people, I found this online, who felt that it sanctioned the brainwashing therapy for which Soren was subjected. I didn't get that.
I didn't get that vibe from it.
Others who felt the creative staff abdicated their responsibility to explore the issue. They didn't go far enough. Some thought the episode too timid, using the allegory in lieu of explicitly acknowledging gay relationships, which is a point, while others critiqued the scenario of a genderless world where heterosexuality was persecuted as the epitome of conservative fears. Whatever. But interesting. This is one of those episodes that, again, it's doing what Star Trek does. It makes you think. It makes you ask questions,
The producer, Rick Berman, he said, we thought we had made a very positive statement about sexual prejudice in a distinctive Star Trek way, but we still got letters from those who thought it was just our way of washing our hands of the homosexual situation. And the Star Trek producers are often accused of having cold feet when it comes to addressing homosexuality. And Berman has been accused by lead actors of various Trek series of routinely vetoing scripts which deal openly with the subject.
That is, as you watch Star Trek, as we continue the Space Show, you'll see that. They are very hesitant to do it. Where J.J. Abrams, hey, say what you will about his Star Trek, dived right in. You know, Sulu is married to a guy and they have a kid. You know,
You have to consider too the time that it was created in. That kind of stuff was much more taboo to talk about in public forums versus now. You know, there's the 80s or the 90s.
This is the 90s.
The early 90s. Yeah, still very, that wasn't discussed openly. And I'm sure they were afraid of people just having huge uproar when they did it.
But at the same time, there was a show on TV called Soap with Billy Crystal as the first gay character. He was one of the first gay characters on television. And that was before that.
Isn't this around the time when Ellen has her show too?
And Ellen too,
She hadn't come out yet, I don't think.
Well, my Billy Crystal example still stands. That was a show from the early 80s, late 70s, where he was a gay character. But very funny show, Soap. Look it up, kids.
So Ellen's TV series started in 1994, but I don't know when the episode where she actually comes out.
This episode was 92.
So that's 2 years before the show was even on.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. I think they probably did what they thought was the best at the time. And I personally think that looking at it from the opposite side of it, where you talk about a genderless species persecuting gendered members of their species, gives a very kind of interesting open door to anyone who was already very opposed to talking about that kind of thing, because
this is the future liberals want.
Because they can look at it and be like, well, why shouldn't that person be allowed to be a girl, or why shouldn't that person be allowed to be a boy? And it's like, that's the point they're trying to make. Switch the shoe around.
Exactly.
That's what they're saying.
And another thing is that in the first season and the first few episodes, remember we saw the men wearing the skirts, the skirts.
Scants.
Scants, that was it. Thank you. And there was so much
big uproar,
angry mail that was sent to Paramount about that. And I just bet you that sort of made him skittish.
Probably.
Here we are in season 5 and we're doing something like this, they have their paychecks. They got to protect their paychecks. I get that. The writers, Paramount, all those people, they got to protect their paychecks. But at the same time, this is what Star Trek's about. This is what you signed on to.
Right. Pushing the boundary in the stories and things like that. So, it's easy to look back and criticize. Yeah. But, being there at the time, it's hard to say what they were.
Exactly. No, I liked your point, Tony. I thought that was terrific.
But it's so funny because some of these conversations, they're timeless. They just come back again and again.
Oh, yeah,
which leads us into our next episode.
Well, just real quick before we leave this, the whole conversion therapy thing, which is still around, even though it's been just debunked left and right. I couldn't help but think of Lou Reed from Velvet Underground, because he was having homosexual tendencies in the 70s, and his parents took him and took him to a doctor and gave him electroshock therapy to get the gay out of him, and it messed him up for the rest of his life. So conversion therapy. Anyway, Star Trek address. I applause to Star Trek being Star Trek. Yes.
Love, love, love. But our next episode, Cause and Effect. The Enterprise gets caught in a time loop, which always has one result: total destruction of the ship itself. Another episode directed by Sir Jonathan Frakes. So, unbeknownst to the crew, the Enterprise is caught in a time loop where they are continually reliving the same day. The Enterprise approaches a temporal distortion in the Typhon expanse, from which they see another Federation vessel is emerging. This is astonishing, as the Enterprise is supposed to be the first Starfleet vessel in this unexplored expanse of space. They lose power, cannot engage thrusters, impulse, or warp engines, hails the oncoming vessels, but they are not answered. The evasive action they take using a tractor beam to push the oncoming vessel away from them is unsuccessful as the emerging vessel hits the right nacelle of the Enterprise. There is an engine core breach as the core ejection systems are offline. Picard orders evacuation of the ship. The Enterprise is destroyed, at which point the time loop brings them back to the beginning and they relive the sequence all over again. So the day starts with a game of poker. And each time we revisit this game of poker, they vocally address, I think we're having some deja vu. So Data, Riker, Worf, and Beverly are playing poker. Beverly calls Riker's bluff. Geordi has an ear infection and meets Beverly in sickbay. Beverly reports to Picard that she and many other people aboard the ship hear voices in their rooms, and there has been experiences of deja vu. At every iteration, more and more people on the ship get this deja vu sensation. Beverly figures that the ear infection is actually dizziness caused by after images that Geordi's visor is converting into neural inputs and feeding into his brain. The after images are accompanied with a minor shift in the Dekion field surrounding the visor. She makes a recording of the voices at night and has Geordi and Data analyze them. Data says these are 1,000 overlapping voices of the Enterprise crew. The voices were recorded at the same time as the ship's sensors picked up the Dekion field distortion. Geordi postulates that they are stuck in a temporal loop. And I love when people figure out that they're in a time loop, because the first question is, oh my God, how many times have we done this?
Yeah.
And I know if I was ever caught in a time loop, that would scare the bejesus out of me. But also, something I love about Star Trek and Starfleet and being on the Enterprise is I know I could go up to any one of my friends and be like, I think we might be in a time loop. And they would believe me.
They would take you seriously. Yeah.
They would take me seriously. So Data has an idea that might get them out of it. Geordi says that every time the loop resets, they lose all the information from the previous loop, and they theorize that the Enterprise entered the time loop when it exploded close to the temporal distortion. So the way to exit the loop would be to avoid the collision. Geordi thinks about a way to transfer information into the next loop, and through science, we have Data. And so
brains.
His positronic brain. So they set up a message within Data's positronic brain. And so at the next reset, when they start playing poker, first everyone is dealt a 3, and then everyone is dealt a 3 of a kind. And so, okay, something must be amiss here. Beverly diagnoses Geordi's dizziness as distortions in the Dekion fields are converted by visual images and by his visor. At the meeting, Geordi and Data report that there are more than 2,000 instances of the ship's crew seeing the number 3. Surely not a coincidence. They also detect the Dekion message sent by Data from the previous iteration, but don't decipher its meaning. So the ship encounters the temporal distortion again and again. Picard gives the order to use the tractor beam based on Data's suggestion, but in the nick of time, Data notices the 3 pips on Riker's uniform and deciphers that the tractor beam will not be successful, and goes, oh, hey, maybe not. And they open the shuttle bay doors to use its explosive decompression as a thrust to push the Enterprise out of the way of the oncoming ship. And it works. Time continues forward, and we meet our friend Kelsey Grammer as pirate of the USS Bozeman. And he is wearing old uniform. Old. He first appears on the screen, and I was like, oh my God, is that Frasier? Oh my God, uniform old.
Kelsey Grammer.
Well, this is, if you notice, the ship is a Reliant class. And so he's wearing the Star Trek II Wrath of Khan uniforms with the turtleneck and all that.
It's got that ribbed turtleneck.
And this episode ends far too soon, because that's the conversation I want to see.
Yeah.
Because Picard is like, ooh, what year do you think it is? And Kelsey Grammer says whatever year he thinks it is. And he's like, okay, you're going to need to beam over to our ship so we can have a chit chat. And then the episode ends. And I'm like, oh no, I need the next scene. I need to see this conversation happen.
Nah.
But we don't get it.
So the question is, and I didn't look this up, did the adventures of Captain Kelsey Grammer, did he get any more adventures in like books or something like that? Because he's now in our time. I'd like to know. Did he meet up with the whale lady from Star Trek 4? Did they,
Was he in the original series movies as that captain? Or
No.
Was this the first time we've seen him?
No.
Okay.
Kelsey Grammer was a fan of Star Trek and asked if he could be on Star Trek.
Well, they were shot. Cheers at the time was shot.
Cheers was like across the hall. Yeah.
And the original plan is because at this time, Savick, what was the actress?
Kirstie Alley.
Kirstie Alley was also on Cheers at the same time. And so the idea was is that she was going to be standing behind him as his first officer, Lieutenant Savick. And that's one of the reasons they used that Reliant class ship. They thought, well, we can do this. But, of course, Kirstie Alley being Kirstie Alley, schedule conflict is what she said. I think it's bullshit.
Her asking price was too high.
And there was that. But Kelsey Grammer said, I love Star Trek. I want to be on Star Trek. Sure, why not? Let's do it. So they kept the model. They kept the Reliant class, named it the USS Bozeman because that was, Braga's hometown, Bozeman, Montana. But he was also a fan of the extremely racist, but one of my favorite funny movies, the Steven Spielberg flop 1941. Again, extremely racist.
Really?
But I will watch it all the time.
When it comes on TNT.
Well, I have the Blu-ray. But anyway, so it's the NCC 1941, the Bozeman.
1941.
Because he's a fan of the movie.
How fascinating. So, yeah, Kirstie Alley wanted too much money. Kelsey Grammer was like, I'm just happy to be here. Something interesting about this episode. So I knew about this episode before I watched it, and I knew that according to the 50 Years of Star Trek history book, there were actually people who called into their TV stations saying that something was wrong and it was looping. But
awesome.
and I knew that. But as I watched the episode, I was like, how could anyone possibly think this? Because to prevent the episode from getting boring, whenever they had to do the scenes over again, Jonathan Frakes would reshoot them from different angles and perspectives to give it a fresh twist on the same story. And I noticed that immediately with the first loop.
Yeah.
And I was like, how?
It's not the same footage.
It's not the same footage. How could anybody be mistaken by this? Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm just smart. Maybe I'm built different. But to create the explosion of the Enterprise, the production team built an Enterprise model kit, stuffed it with firecrackers, and blew it up while shooting it from multiple angles. Because it was the destruction of the Enterprise, the producers considered it a special occasion, which called for a more realistic and impressive explosion.
Nice.
So
it's a cool episode. I mean,
it's fun.
Yeah, it's a timey-wimey episode. It's a lot of fun, but it just makes you want to know what happened to the crew of the Bozeman.
90 years they were stuck in that loop.
90 years. What happened to the crew? What happened to the families? What happened to the captain? I'm sure he gets re-educated or brought up to date and maybe given his own command. Is he still in the, so many questions, but a great episode though.
They should have brought him back as a cameo in Picard at some point.
And it's one of the and it's one of the highest rated episodes, not just, favorability, but viewership in Nielsen. It was one of the highest rated because the promo for the week left you hanging every time because it kept showing the Enterprise getting exploded, and you're like,
how will they get out of this one?
How are they getting out of this one?
Yeah.
Let's move on to a Wesley Crusher episode. The First Duty. Wesley Crusher's team has an accident at Starfleet Academy. Picard offers to help a Starfleet investigation as to what happened and begins to suspect they are hiding something.
Do you know what this episode is?
Do you know what this episode is, Tony?
Yeah, I
Tell me about it.
I just finished watching the Lower Decks season 4. This is the whole tie-in to the big last 2 episodes of Lower Decks season 4.
Hell yeah, brother.
Now I understand all the Tom Paris references and all of that kind of stuff. Oh man, it was good. I loved watching this episode after watching the last part of Lower Decks.
Even my husband, he big Lower Decks fan, we watched this episode and he's like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, that was me. Wait a sec, get my phone out. Yeah, it is. It's the thing.
They're doing the thing.
They're doing the thing.
So Captain Picard is delighted to be the commencement speaker at Starfleet Academy on Earth. Even before the Enterprise arrives for graduation, he must deliver the news to Dr. Crusher that her son, Cadet Wesley, his Nova Squadron had an accident during Saturn maneuvers. Close formation flying, during which there was a collision. All 5 ships were destroyed, and only 4 cadets managed to transport out, in which his teammate Joshua Albert was killed, and Wesley had some minor injuries, but he's fine. So Admiral Brand, head of the Academy, informs Picard that there is very little wreckage and data recorders have been recovered. Picard is part of the investigation and offers his help of the Enterprise to Brand. Commander Albert, Josh's father, is there, and Captain Sat-Elk is helping Brand with interrogations. Nicholas Locarno was Wesley's squadron leader at the time of the accident and his fellow cadet at the Academy. Nicholas tells Wesley to stick together with the rest of the squad during inquiry. So Beverly and Picard go to visit Wesley as he's doing his physical therapy arm exercises. And Wesley's acting real weird. Real weird.
Weirder than normal for Wesley.
Weirder than normal. And then his friend Nicholas Locarno comes in and he's like, okay, Mom, Picard, Dad, I need you guys to leave. And they're like, oh, okay.
And I'm like, hey, that's Tom Paris with a different name.
Also, there's a B plot to this episode that's whatever. But if we can recall, Picard has often reflected fondly on the groundskeeper of the Academy named Boothby. And so Picard goes and finds Boothby and has conversations with him. B plot. So
it's Ray Walston, who was the star of My Favorite Martian and was Poop Deck Pappy in Popeye. You know, just good to see the grumpy old guy having something to do, just being and doing what he does best, play the grumpy old guy.
Yeah. He's very mad about the grounds and people keep ruining his garden beds.
Mr. Hand in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Obviously.
All right.
So
I'm giving his IMDb here. I'm off the top of my head.
That's what I mean. It's like Carrie's like, I know this guy.
Those are the ones off the top of my head.
But I know him most fondly as groundskeeper Boothby from Star Trek: The Next Generation. So the official investigation Picard is a part of soon discovers that Nicholas Locarno's team is trying to cover up what really happened. For one thing, deviating from the original flight plan, which was filed at the Academy before the flight. Secondly, blaming the deceased for panicking during a risky trajectory. Hajar and Sito were other members of the team that day. Hajar was the navigator and says that the decision to change the flight plan was taken en route to Saturn, and since they were within the safety parameters, she did not consider it relevant to mention. Sito was in the tail of the formation and should have seen the collision, but tells the court that she didn't because says that she was flying on sensor readings only.
Highly unusual.
Unusual, and she had no visual contact with Josh's plane when he broke formation. When Brand pushes her, Nicholas steps in and says that Josh panicked. Nicholas indicates that the whole accident was Josh's fault and that he had been making mistakes recently. So I, of course, in Admiral Brand's shoes, am like, okay, why didn't you say anything? Why haven't you guys are obviously withholding information. What's going on, kids? So Wesley is upset that Nicholas painted Josh as an incompetent cadet. Wesley is worried that Nicholas lied as Josh was not responsible for the accident. Albert, Josh's dad, meets Wesley later and thanks him for taking care of Josh and helping him with his studies. And at this point, I'm like, Wesley, you are Starfleet's good boy. You cannot be doing this thing that you're doing of just lying by omission. So, in the meantime, Picard has Data and Geordi take part in the flight recorder analysis. Wesley's flight recorder was the only one recovered, and even it had data only prior to the collision, as most of it was destroyed. So Wesley testifies that the Nova Squadron was in formation during the Jaeger loop performed just prior to the collision. A random Saturn satellite, however, sensor sweep shows that they lied by omission. They were not in the standard formation during the flight path. Wesley says they were supposed to be in a diamond and they were in a circle. So what's up with that, Wesley? And he says, I have nothing to say.
Busted.
Wesley, Starfleet's good boy. So Captain Sat-Elk is able to prove that Wesley lied during his testimony and the team formation was different. So later, in talking with Geordi and Data, Picard figures out that during the flight, Wesley had his engine coolant valve open, which is the first step before discharging the plasma. But with the live engine, it would mean that the plasma would ignite. So Picard pieces together what he thinks they were trying to do. They were trying to perform the Colvard Starburst, a very difficult maneuver in precision flying and not performed at the Academy for over 100 years. Why, do you ask? Because it was banned. Because the last time they tried to perform it, all 5 cadets died. So this maneuver is now banned at Starfleet. But Nicholas, who is graduating, wanted to graduate as a living legend, and Joshua Albert paid the price. So his whole plan was to do the Colvard Starburst, and everyone would be like, oh my God, Nicholas Locarno, wow, what a living legend. But Josh died and paid the price. So Picard confronts Wesley, and he demands Wesley answer him, and Wesley goes, I can't. And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? You cannot.
They still got the 5th in Star Trek times. He pleaded the 5th.
And Picard is furious. Yeah. Who could blame him? So Wesley goes to Nicholas and he's like, oh my God, Picard knows we're fucked. Like, Picard knows. And the cadets know that they can get off with a formal reprimand for lack of proof. And Picard only has a theory. They has no proof. Nicholas wants Wesley to stick to their story, but Wesley cannot call Picard a liar. Nicholas says that Wesley should resign if he can't keep his mouth shut. And he says that his team is more important than Wesley's guilty conscience. Absolutely not, Nicholas Locarno. So the next day, Wesley testifies, Starfleet's good boy, and tells the truth. Nicholas is expelled from the Academy, but he protects the rest of his team and takes full responsibility for the incident. And as punishment, Wesley is ordered to repeat his class at the Academy, with everybody knowing what he did.
This is the way to keep him off the Enterprise even longer.
That's right. Make him repeat the 4th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, just a very stressful episode because we're not used to seeing Wesley in this kind of light.
Yeah.
Well, and you got a trial episode, which I know you enjoy.
A trial episode.
Yep.
We also got a great speech from Picard, where the first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth, was the killer line in that one. That's one you get tattooed on your forearm here. But,
which also, ironically, comes up in the next episode, too, with Alexander.
Well,
very, and not as high stakes. No. Obviously.
But before we leave this episode, I'm going to tell you something, Rebecca, because I know that by the time we get there, you'll forget. I want you in Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 to be waiting for the Boothby supernova.
Oh, my God.
Awesome.
You will have forgotten.
Correct, I will forget. Yes.
You will forget. But the Boothby supernova is coming in Prodigy Season 2. Yes, Wesley Crusher. All right.
Oh, my God. So Nick Locarno's character would lay the framework for the role of Tom Paris in Star Trek Voyager. The same actor, Robert Duncan McNeil, would play this role, and Locarno was supposed to be on Voyager, but legal issues like having to pay royalties to the writers of this episode, the first duty to be on Voyager, it didn't work out. So they turned him into a different character, but Tom Paris's background and personality were based in part on Nicholas Locarno.
I totally noticed that in this episode. I was like,
yeah,
this is the same character plays in Voyager.
How funny.
Ace pilot, kind of cocky, team first above everything. Yeah.
And good. I'm glad he was expelled. I don't want this type of attitude in Starfleet. This episode was screened for cadets of the U.S. Air Force Academy as an illustration of the honor code that students were expected to observe. Nice to hear.
To be fair, in defense of the character, he did say what he would do at the end, and he took all the blame for what happened. So
he shouldn't have been doing this in the first place, Tony.
I agree, but I'm saying he did at least do something right at the end and take full responsibility, so that
a
the
regular
other cadets
Locarno over here
didn't have. Team Locarno.
Lastly, this is also the first appearance of Starfleet Academy, filmed on location at Tillman Water Reclamation Plant in Japanese Gardens. This is not the only fictional educational institution to be filmed there, and just before this, it was used for the campus of Bill and Ted University in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, you see this building in quite a few sci-fi shows.
But moving on, last episode we're going to talk about cost of living. As undetectable parasites devour the ship, Deanna's mother arrives, taking young Alexander under her wing en route to meet a man she's blindly agreed to marry. You know I love a Loaxana episode.
This is very out of character for her as well.
Yeah.
She doesn't
Okay, so
do this kind of thing.
the Enterprise destroys an asteroid headed for a planet. Unknown to everyone, the debris of the asteroid clumps together and comes to rest on the hull of the Enterprise. Whatever. I guess that's like the big scary thing of this episode, but whatever. Worf and Alexander are having issues living together as Alexander won't take orders from Worf regarding house chores.
Put your dirty clothes in the dirty clothes hamper, kid.
Worf is angry, and Deanna suggests drawing up a contract, clearly listing down the responsibilities of each member of the family. Worf wants Alexander to do his own laundry. Alexander wants Worf not to yell at him and to let him visit the holodeck after he's finished his chores. I think reasonable requests from everybody. And so Deanna says to Alexander, hey, and this is difficult now, but in time, we do come to appreciate our parents. They leave. And then Deanna is informed that her mother is on the ship, and she's like, oh, Christ. So Loaxana arrives. Loaxana takes a young Alexander under her wing after she learns that Deanna is trying to get father and son to agree to a contract of duties and chores. Loaxana admonishes Mr. Wolf for trying to draw a contract with Alexander and decides to guide and protect Alex.
I'll take it from here.
I'm just saying, if I was Deanna, I would be like, where was this when I was a child?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Loaxana says contracts are only for people who do not trust one another. Alex admits to Loaxana that he hates Worf and misses his mom. You guys, how can you hate Alex? I don't understand.
He's okay in this episode.
Loaxana spends more time with him and even takes him to the holodeck. This means that Alexander's not doing his chores, as outlined by Worf. Deanna is angry that Loaxana is giving Alex mixed messages and straying him from the responsibility that he needs to learn. And then Loaxana delivers this devastating line. You were raised with mixed messages and you still turned out to be so dull, or whatever the line is. Just like an absolutely brutal roast to her own daughter.
Yeah.
So Loaxana is using the Enterprise for her own business purposes, where she has blindly agreed to marry the third Minister Campio of the Conference of Judges on the planet Costalane. He's royalty. They haven't met. They've only exchanged Tinder profiles with each other. And she wants to get married on board the Enterprise and Picard to give her away. Picard is like, I gladly give away Loaxana Troi. Deanna is angry and wants Loaxana to at least meet this man before she commits to spending the rest of her life with him. And then she gets suspicious when she learns that Loaxana will not be naked at her own wedding, as we know is Beta Z tradition.
Great scene. You mean you're not going to be naked at your own wedding?
Yeah, Loaxana is letting this man plan the whole wedding. Yep. And it's just unusual for Loaxana Troi to be doing this. Meanwhile, the glittery parasites devour the ship from the inside. Whatever. So Loaxana gets her wedding dress. It's hideous. Blah, blah, blah. And she admits to Alexander, because Alexander comes to visit, and it's so sweet. She admits to him that this is a compromise wedding, as she is alone and doesn't have many choices at her age. Alex gives her comfort and company as a child can. Campio arrives on board with his protocol master, Urko. Loaxana is pretty upset when Campio and Urko try to control her with their traditions and protocols, and she escapes to the holodeck with Alexander, where they spend this time in this holodeck program. That's insane and would drive me crazy. I don't know if you guys would feel the same way at this place.
It was like a terrible kids program.
Yeah.
It was. And Loaxana's like, I'm just here to take a mud bath, not to deal with juggling minstrels. So Data and Geordi figure out something is eating away at all the nitrium on the ship, blah, 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 blah. Systems, the ship falling apart, but ultimately it's fine. Time for the wedding, and everybody is there in 10 forward, and Loaxana shows up naked, taking back her power, and ready to be like, no, I'm Loaxana Troi, and I do what I want. Because after spending time with Alex and maybe getting back in touch with her inner child, I don't know. But Campio and Urko, utterly shocked, they leave, and the episode ends with the mud bath, and everyone's having a good time.
Even Worf's in the mud bath.
Even Worf is in he's in the mud bath, and he's like, what do you mean I just sit here?
So we just sit here?
absolutely hilarious. But this episode, I just generally love a Loxana Troy episode. But when I was putting this episode, like the notes and stuff together, I realized something. Majel Barrett's husband, Gene Roddenberry, passed away 4 months before this episode was filmed. So when Loxana gives a speech about how loneliness is a terrible thing at her age, some fans construed it as autobiographical for her. Also, this episode won 2 Emmy Awards, Outstanding Individual Achievement in Costume Design and Outstanding Individual Achievement in Makeup. It was also nominated for Outstanding Achievement in Hairstyling, which I can absolutely see, because the first thing I said about Majel Barrett when she showed up was, wow, look at this makeup. That's insane. And the last shot of Deanna in the mud bath, her hair is giant. I don't know if you guys caught that, but her hair was huge.
You use enough hairspray, you get an Emmy.
That's right.
Also, something else that I thought was super fascinating about this episode, Loxana seems to have difficulty using the ship's computer and even comments on it, which is funny because that's her. Mm-hmm. So
the reviews for this episode from the AV Club, for example.
Oh, gosh.
Gave it a C.
Oh, no.
Saying Alexander is still insanely annoying.
I thought he was a fairly believable little kid in this episode.
A struggling
pretty
little
accurate.
boy.
Also, quote, sad acrobats, hairy dudes in mud baths and mute dancers, and a floating clown head on the holodeck. Creepiest scene in all of Star Trek.
The higher...
The fewer. What does this even mean?
Apparently, Alexander has decided it has deep and purposeful meaning because he repeats it like 4 times.
Yeah, I just don't understand all this Alexander hate. I think the kid is acting as any child would in this situation that he's in.
But he is not acting like a Klingon child.
Yeah.
Because he's not full Klingon. He's a quarter human. You gotta give him a break.
And you can't expect him to act like a Klingon child when he's been raised by humans.
Bingo. Exactly.
When he's not even on the planet, right? He's on a Federation starship.
Also, Mr. Woof, you were raised by humans.
Yeah, Mr. Woof.
Yeah, Mr. Woof. Anyway, that's all of our episodes that we're going to talk about today. What do we, like I said at the beginning, an astounding run.
A good run, yeah.
Yep.
Can't believe all of these episodes were so fantastic. But in our next episode, we will be talking about The Perfect Mate, Imaginary Friend, I, Borg, The Next Phase, and The Inner Light. Leading up to the finale, which we'll do the season finale and the season 6 premiere in its own episode.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. Cool. But, any final thoughts about these episodes?
Just classic bread and butter Star Trek. You know, it's the good stuff right there.
Ethics.
Shining a light on things that need to be looked at.
Ethics in the Outcast, great, because it's doing what Star Trek's supposed to do. Cause and effect, just giving us a cool episode, you know, just kind of fun, but you know, one of those solve the mystery kind of thing, which I love. So yeah, good ones.
Yeah. The next batch of episodes, the next phase is written by Ronald D. Moore. None of the other episodes are written by him, but I like Ronald D. Moore episodes. So, and I know I gotta watch his other shows.
You gotta watch his other shows.
Yeah,
Holy
I know.
moly. The Battlestar Galactica reboot, For All Mankind.
Yeah,
just
I know.
Absolutely phenomenal television.
That Battlestar Galactica reboot.
You are wasting your life right now not watching these shows. They are so good.
You know what else? You know what else is crazy? Looking at the rest of the episodes for season 5 and then going into the episodes in season 6. Not a Q episode to be found in season 5. What's up with that?
Maybe what's his face was busy doing other stuff. Nah, that can't be it.
Did he have soap operas or something? He was in a lot of soap operas.
Oh, was he?
In those days. But, I don't. Maybe he got his ass kicked sufficiently, and he's just staying away for a bit.
He's like, that Picard always winning.
Well, we got a hell of a hell of a Q episode. My favorite episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation coming up with Q in it.
Oh boy.
Oh,
Well-
Tapestry, Tony. That's the episode. Tapestry. It is my favorite episode of Star
Been a
Trek: The Next
long
Generation.
time since I've watched that one.
Such a good episode. Anyway,
Okay, well, I'm excited. And until then, thank you once again for joining us on this episode of the Space Show, episode 50, everybody. What a
Ooh,
what
nice.
a
it's kind of a milestone, isn't it?
yeah, good for us. And so thank you. Don't forget to like and comment if you are so inclined. And we'll see you next time. But until then, we will continue to go where no man has gone before, but a lot of people have gone before. Thank you once again, everybody.